It's August 12th, 2013, and this past weekend we went to see Timpanogos Cave, and we also went on some of the Alpine Loop to Cascade Springs, and then over to Sundance and down. Took pretty much the whole day. 5 hours of hiking and carrying Mr. Beebe. Anyway, aside from that, I wanted to talk a little bit about more about homosexuality and what some would call the liberal agenda. And I think you have to realize my father is a liberal. He was and is, I guess. Although he has dementia now, so. But in the past he was a liberal. And I think one key tenet of liberalism is assuming that everything is equal. So, for example, gay marriage is this, equivalent to straight marriage as far as the ability to raise children and, healthy, thriving, productive children. Gay marriage is the same as straight marriage. A gay couple is the same as a straight couple. And, listening to those, the black atheists out of Atlanta was kind of an eye-opener. And I started to realize, I have had a fair amount of association with liberal groups and activities. And so I have, maybe some even kind of special knowledge about gay culture, because for several years I hung out with my gay nephew, and he would invite me to these parties at gay houses and gay bars. So I'm quite familiar with the gay culture, what goes on, what people are like, what happens. Oh, this is a pretty good series here. Yeah. Anyway, gotta return some videos to the library here. So, I've examined, there's problems. There's, as far as gay people go, there are some nice people, there's some service-oriented people who, spend their lives trying to help people, because that's what they enjoy, and, being kind of the part of the social fabric that, they're in a job where they help people and they use their brains, and that's good. But on the other hand, there's a huge part of the quote-unquote gay culture and gay scene that is incredibly selfish and chasing your own tail and childish, a permanent wasteful childhood, where you're incredibly vain and you're, if you have a view of Truman Capote and how he was portrayed in the recent film about him, get some idea. People who can just crassly comment on things and, oh yes, let's make a crass comment about this and about that and about this, crass and narcissistic. And so and having these permanent underwear nights at gay bars and kind of rotating all around the gay bar scene. Oh, underwear night. And and if you see a gay homosexual man on the internet, he's always got his shirt off. I mean, and on Facebook, I had first-hand observations of my nephew where he was always having pictures of himself in his underwear. And that's how they spend their lives. And then talking about boys and, oh, that's a cute boy. And then having a convicted pedophile who abused 12 to 16-year-olds in Boy Scouts. He went to prison and then got released from prison, and then, hey, he's welcome back into the gay community, no problem. And then we have the Catholic priest abuse thing where the priests abuse young boys. And notice the commonality in the term boys. And then we have the issue of the fact that homosexual sex is not inherently reproductive. So you have a few key things, okay? A near permanent petty childhood state, wasteful childhood. There are some uses to childhood, learning to play and have fun and using your brain. But then you have this petty narcissistic childhood where you just spend your life posting underwear shots on Facebook, going to parties where you just, alcohol-centered parties, going to bars where it's underwear night a lot, and posting, anyway, a permanent wasteful, kind of a stunted state. An animal that's not inclined to reproduce is essentially damaged, okay? And so I've commented on this in the past that the recent past, that I think that homosexuality essentially comes from the machinery of how sex gets set up in us, different hormones being exposed to different hormones in the womb, and DNA, and sometimes that whole machinery of just how it gets set up can kind of misfire and do different things and create what is essentially an outlier, thankfully it's an outlier, right? I mean, lesbians may dream of parthenogenesis, but as far as I can tell, there's not parthenogenesis going on with us at present. At least not, natural parthenogenesis. Maybe you can do it in the lab, but who can afford to do that? Maybe some rich lesbian will do it in the lab, create some kid from her skin cells or some such freak thing. And speaking of freaks, back to the liberal agenda. For a few years, I would pop in occasionally to the South Valley Unitarian Church, and on the top of their doorway is a gay flag. And so, and for a few years, they had this minister who was a transgendered freak, like a man who changed himself to a woman, or no, it was a woman who changed herself to a man. Yeah, it was woman to man, and then it was pretty fat and kind of ugly, speaking truthfully. And so the gay flag on the top of your organization essentially says, "Freaks welcome here." That's what I think. Okay? And when they say that, oh, we need to have love extending to everybody, okay. It's not a matter of love, it's a matter of figuring out what the cause, what the ramifications are of your choice. And so I think that homosexuality is both genetically influenced and a choice. Like, for example, if you were a kid who was maybe, let's say you were a male child exposed to too much female hormone in the womb or not enough testosterone or some such thing, so you were given the propensity to like men sexually. But let's say you grew up in a culture where that was frowned upon. Well, you might well find a wife and you may well be happy, darn it. Okay? So, I also had a gay uncle who died of AIDS. And he had a family. Now, would it have been better for him to, not cheat on his wife, not get AIDS, not leave his family child, fatherless? And one of his daughters ended up being supposedly gay. Yeah, she had a girlfriend, but I can't help but wonder whether the fact that one of my uncle's kids being involved with gayness was a direct result of growing up in a home where, yeah, daddy's gay, and I love daddy so much, therefore I will try to have my brain be more accepting of being gay. And maybe that speaks to more flexibility on the part of human sexuality in the first place, like this differentiation between heterosexual, homosexual, bi, all that stuff. There can be some genetic influence, but there can also be, socialization. And maybe that's the key, is what do we want to do with socialization? Do you want to have a social structure that's open, that assumes that everything is equal when it isn't, that assumes that inherently non-reproductive sex is as good for humanity and as good for even the individual as inherently reproductive sex? I mean, from both an individual perspective and a group perspective, you could argue that inherently non-reproductive sex is less good both for the individual and for the community. So that's kind of a key thing to being willing to take a step back. If you're an atheist group flying the gay flag up front, you're not taking a step back. Okay, we have to take a step back from everything, including the liberal presuppositions. Okay? It's not just the conservative presuppositions which need to be questioned. We need to question the liberal ones also. And then after you've questioned everything, then maybe we can, naturalism plays a key. And those atheists out of Atlanta, the black atheists, their advocacy for what the tribes do in Africa on the gay issue, that's an example for me of people trying to examine, okay, let's see what human nature really is. And then try to, now there's parts of human nature that are most worth suppressing to some extent, like, being more violent, and the level of violence has gone down, as per Steven Pinker. But on the other hand, just leaving a religion and assuming, you need to be completely non-judgmental. Like, I went to an ex-Mormon coffee meeting, and the leader of the meeting said, she said to these two lesbians, one of whom were still married to her husband, and she said, it's no problem. We're at a time where we're just learning to be not judgmental. Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm a human first. And when you're born, you're kind of an atheist by default. So the term atheist is kind of superfluous to some extent. But I'm not only a family values atheist, you know, who thinks that straight pride is a lot more useful than gay pride, and how a lot of I think there's a problem with the fact that a lot of atheist groups have been co-opted by gays. You know, the gay flag this, the gay flag that. No, the gay flag means freaks welcome here, and we're going to assume that everything is equal when it's not. It's not equal. And so, anyway, but I'm a family values human, and I think having family values is something also we're born with, you know. And having an advocacy for assuming that not everything is equal is something we're born with, and maybe it can be socialized out of us with liberal, ultra-lefty, teachings in universities, but I think we need to question that. And not from the perspective of a God, but just from the perspective of examining what human nature is, what human history is, and let's do an anthropological evaluation of all of human cultures, okay? And if you're a homosexual scientist, you might want to take the approach, oh, let's just search for stuff that backs up my presuppositions. But, what if you find stuff that your presuppositions are wrong? And I guess the key thing I want to share is that, yeah, I've examined a lot of liberal stuff. Gay stuff, a lot. And it's not all it's cracked up to be. So, if you're a gay man, I think you should consider finding a woman to hook up with. Long term. Okay? Because this hard differentiation is kind of bogus, and assuming everything is equal, that's also bogus. And do you really want to spend your life chasing your own tail? So, here's for a secular advocacy for living a straight life, even if you have some gay proclivities. Okay? This is a result of a lot of observations and examining things, and so-called soul searching, which is essentially thinking deeply about things and thinking about legacy, and I agree with these black atheists out of Atlanta, where they said the only immortality we'll ever experience, real flesh and blood immortality, is if we have children. So think about that. Okay? All right, have fun.